Just gonna wait a few seconds that everyone joins and we will start. In the meantime, I introduce myself. My name is Manon Thiel and I work for the Renewables Grid Initiative. For those who don't know our organization, I'll give you a short introduction of who we are. And still, people are still entering, but I will start with the introduction. So RGI organizes this webinar today in the context of the Risky project. You will hear everything about the project in a few seconds. And today we will explore the topic of data sharing and how, when it's done in the right way, it can be a win-win for wildlife protection and the deployment of renewables and transport infrastructure. Before we start, let me just give you a few housekeeping rules. So it would be great if you make sure that you're muted and rename yourself with your name and organization so we know who we are talking to. If you have any questions regarding the presentations, feel free to write it in the chat. We will address those questions during the Q&A session and I will call up your name. This webinar is recorded and the recording will be publicly available on RGI and Risky websites. So for those who don't know who RGI is, the Renewables Grid Initiative, we are an NGO based in Berlin, in Germany, and we are a unique collaboration of climate and environmental NGOs and transmission system operators from across Europe. Together, we joined forces to promote fair, transparent, and sustainable grid development to enable the growth of renewables in line with Paris agreements. So what does that mean exactly? We bring our members, those organizations that you see on this beautiful slide, we bring them together at the same table and we agree on positions and projects to work on to push forward the energy transition in a way that works for nature, the climate, and people. And RGI is a consortium partner of the Risky project, which looks into mortality data around energy and transport infrastructure. As we all know, wildlife mortality remain widespread across country and infrastructure, yet data are fragmented and siloed. Without data sharing, we miss patterns, predictions, and targeted and effective solutions. But when data is shared, we can identify local hotspots and continental trends and design smarter mitigation strategy, which leads to biodiversity-friendly infrastructure. So why isn't it happening already? Concerns from different stakeholders come from confidentiality, time, or the fear of misuse of the data they share. But experience shows that safe and transparent data sharing works, and it can reduce costs, speed up permitting, and strengthen trust within stakeholders, advancing conservation and economic goals. So today our message is clear. Data sharing isn't exposure, it's collaboration. It's a strategic investment for operators, researchers, and NGOs alike. It's one solution to align the development of the needed infrastructure with biodiversity goals. In line with this and within the Risky project, RGI created in 2025 a questionnaire shared with key stakeholders. And the goal of this questionnaire was to understand how stakeholders collect mortality data and if and how they share those data. And also understand what conditions could enable data sharing and greater collaboration with key stakeholders. Just a few numbers, we received 85 responses among those 18 grid operators, 8% transport agency, 20% NGOs, and so on. I wanted to share with you a quick analysis of the survey that we collected with a few key questions. So one of the questions was, do you collect mortality data near your infrastructure? And we see a very interesting answer with 86% stakeholders who answered that collect data. But in reality, when we look closer at who are the stakeholders that share it, we see that only 9 out of 15 grid operators collect data, when most of the consultancies and the NGOs collect it. When we asked, do you share this mortality with any third parties? In general, we see that most of the stakeholders who collect data do share this with external bodies. Is the data publicly accessible? We see that only 15%, 51% is partially available and 16% fully available. So, and when we look a little bit closer, only 2 grid operators share their data fully publicly. We also asked them what are the main reasons for not sharing wildlife biodiversity data, wildlife mortality data. And the main concerns remains because the data is sensitive or confidential. And this is exactly what we want to address today and show best practice examples when data sharing was successful in leading to better mitigation strategies and where the concerns were overcome. And that's why I'm happy to share the agenda for today. So I give you a short introduction and then we will move on to my colleague Clara Grilo from CIBIO BiOPOLIS, who is the coordinator of the RISKY project. We will hear about Rui Figueras on the value of global biodiversity data sharing. He works at GBIF from Portugal. The second case study will be with Olivia Geels from Elia, who is the transmission system operator in Belgium, and she will share her experience from Belgium. And finally, we'll have a panel discussions on the challenges and opportunities for data sharing with Larissa Biasotto from BirdLife International, with Tremaine Gregory from WWF US. Olivia will be with us again from Elia. Ruben Moreno-Opo from MITECO, which is the Ministry of Environment in Spain. And Clara will also be with us during this panel. So stay with us. We will have a very fruitful discussions, and we hope that this will inspire you to share, to understand how to better share your data in your organization and country. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I pass the floor to Clara for the introduction on the RISKY project. Clara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Manon, for the introduction and for framing this topic so clearly. I'm really happy to introduce the RISKY project. For some participants that already know about RISKY, I'll be happy to show the progresses of this project. So the aim of our initiative is to turning wildlife mortality from transport and energy into smart decisions. This is a project that is funded by the European program, OSCARS, and it started in 2025, so last year. So why does RISKY matters? Because across the world, millions of animals are killed each year by transport and energy infrastructure. And the main issue is not only the mortality data itself, but because the data remains fragmented and underused. So the data is scattered across NGOs, regulators, research centers, transport agencies, road operators, and police. They are not standardized, they are incomplete, they are difficult to access, and the majority of these data sets are not used for prediction to identify trends and hotspots. So we are missing opportunities to act earlier, to target better mitigation, and to reduce both ecological and financial costs. So the aim of RISKY is to turning this fragmented mortality data into actionable decisions. We are developing a web platform that will integrate the data that we are compiling, so receiving from the data contributors. We standardize and make it interoperable. We are developing analytical tools, user-friendly analytical tools to predict collisions, electrocutions, and also evaluate the impact on wildlife populations. And at the same time, we are analyzing those data to identify species vulnerable to collision and electrocution, and also the impact on populations at the global scale, and in a spatially explicit way to generate sensitivity maps, risk maps to support the infrastructure planning. So we are a growing global network of research centers, infrastructure operators, NGOs, and public agencies. We are a team of 16 researchers and professionals on this area, 3 in full-time and 9 official partners. We are welcoming more organizations to be part of our network. And also we have hundreds of data contributors. So for now, what we have, we are working on global databases on these 4 infrastructures. We already published the global roadkill data with more than 400 contributors, with more than 205,000 records across 50 countries. And we are finalizing the global databases on railways, wind farms, and power lines. And we are still receiving data. So the web platform is online, but it's still in progress because it's not framed with a risky brand. So this web platform will integrate this data, the analytical tools, and the sensitivity maps. Sensitivity maps not only generated by us, but the ones that we can compile from other publications, other authors, reports, and so on. So we are about to launch this mortality risk. This is a user-friendly analytical tool to evaluate the impact on populations. And our analyses are in progress at the global scale. We are supporting at the local scale some research teams. So we are analyzing the risk of collision due to collision with vehicles for different accepts of fauna, birds, and mammals, the risk of collision of birds in wind farms and power lines, the impact on mammal populations due to roadkill, and also we want to rank the bird species that are particularly vulnerable to additional mortality from the cumulative effect of roads, wind farms, and power lines. So better data reach to better decisions, and we can achieve better infrastructure. So what data can reveal? Well, with the large data sets, we can identify large-scale patterns that we cannot identify locally. We can identify with large data sets with more accuracy which species are particularly vulnerable to collision and the impact on their populations. And when we have big data shared, we can predict with more accuracy the future risks. And this is particularly important since the energy and transport infrastructure are expanding worldwide in areas that there is no information. So shared data reduce costs, less duplication of effort, faster assessments, and cost-effective mitigation. And we all gain transparency, trust, better tools, better decisions, and we want in the end have biodiversity-friendly infrastructures. So I welcome you to join the RISKY network to share data, gain insights, improve your decisions. Please contact us to explore collaboration and opportunities, share data, share knowledge. You can contribute with best practices and lessons learned. We have a partnership with Transport Ecology that are welcome case studies that we can share too. And being part of this network, you have access to big data, you have access to analytical tools and sensitivity maps. So together, we believe that we turn data into a positive impact. So I will leave you. Thank you very much. I will leave you with my contacts, and if you want, you can take a screenshot of a code that has our website with more information. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Clara. Very good presentation. Indeed, we also shared in the chat the link to the Risky website, so feel free to go and have a look. And RGI is very proud to be part of this project. Is there any questions? We can address one question for Clara on the Risky project. If so, you can raise your hand. I see a lot of applause, so that's very good. Does anyone have a question for Clara? If not, then we move on to the next presentation. Clara will be back at the panel later on. So if you think about something, you will still have the possibility to ask her. So now I'm happy to introduce Rui Figueras, who works from GBIF in Portugal, and he will talk about the value of data sharing on the global scale. So Rui, you can share your screen, unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manon, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this workshop. So I'll be talking about the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which is a global organization which has the aim to give access to anyone that has access to a browser to use biodiversity data shared through the facility. And we will explain how this map appears. So what we have here is the brighter areas correspond to areas with higher amount of records of biodiversity occurrences. And we can see that this coverage is global, both in land and in water. So the Biodiversity Information Facility is an intergovernmental organization. It's composed by 69 countries, 1/3 of the, let's say, total amount of countries that exist, that are dispersed across all continents, some areas more covered than others. And these countries contribute to the establishment of the network and the facility in sharing the data. But if you consider who is publishing data, it's not only these countries. So this second map shows every country where we have one institution publishing biodiversity data. So it means that it's not mandatory that a country is part of the organization, so that an institution from that country publishes data. So in fact, we have a much wider coverage of institutions publishing data. GBIF has some numbers that are interesting to look. You might think that I'm not excited about this 3.6 billion records that are shared across the network and can be used by anyone, or the 100,000 data sets that are available. But no, the number that excites more here in the slide is the number of publishers. So we have more than 2,000 institutions that share data. And if we think that we have institutions that are from anywhere in the world with different contexts of creating, mobilizing, and producing data, with different ways of working, have all of them agreeing on the same way of providing data in a coordinated and standardized way, this is a true challenge. So that's why these 2,000, more than 2,000 to 2,600 publishers is the number that excites more, because we have real global effort in organizing the data and making that available. Again, that produces this coverage that we can see it's not with the same level of intensity all around the globe. So we have more areas, more covered, other areas with gaps of data, but that's something that is on progress. So how does GBIF work? We have the global secretariat. It's based in Copenhagen. It's coordinating the global infrastructure. And then each country, participant country, has their national node. And that national node is coordinating activities at national level, working directly with institutions and facilitating the infrastructure and the training and documentation in all levels and support so that institutions publish data. So the key entity in this network is the institutions that publish data. Through GBIF, we don't have individual publication of data. We don't have individuals that publish data, although we have citizen science data being published through organizations that are dedicated to citizen science. So this is the structure we have, and it's responsible for maintaining this data workflow. So we have institutions like museums, ministerial or governmental agencies, citizen science initiatives, as I said, business organizations, universities. All of these institutions produce data of different types, of different sources, like observations in the field, literature records, sensor data, etc. And this data is then organized through a data standard and then shared through the global index, which is the coordinated infrastructure at GBIF. And then this data is shared through different channels like the global portal or policy services or through the API to two main types of uses, research and also supporting policy development. So the data that is shared is essentially what we call the essential biodiversity data or the primary biodiversity data. What species, where it was observed, when, in which conditions, by who. This is the primary biodiversity data. So that creates this kind of applications. I'm providing you an example of a total different thing. This is about the Asian hornet. It's an invasive species. And by aggregating data from more than 60 institutions, we can look at this and see what was the progress of these invasive species in recent years in Europe. So you can see that we can have a clear picture on how the invasive distribution of the species occurred. This is only possible by aggregating data from many different institutions. So this data is then made available to this kind of uses in many different scientific applications in areas of ecology, conservation, observing climate change impact, agriculture, etc. And we can see that more and more in recent years, we have the use of the data to support the inventory and management of regional diversity. So it has an effect of local monitoring of biodiversity. So there are also a lot of interest from the business sector. So we have companies that deal with data. It can be utilities that need to mobilize data through global impact assessments or environmental impact assessments that then share the data through the network. So in fact, we have more than 121 companies sharing more than 11 million records globally through more than 1,000 datasets. So data is being shared by companies that see the value of sharing data as a social contribution of their activities. So then this data is supporting through GBIF global organizations and initiatives. One of the most important supports is to the global initiative by the United Nations, the Convention of Biological Diversity. And through this, we have impact globally, but also nationally at the national nodes that support the initiative of this convention in national level. So this is possible because then the network helps in coordinating the global initiative in biodiversity informatics through the areas of biodiversity knowledge. So you can see on the left that there are many organizations that agree in collaborating about biodiversity data, and then this needs to be translated to through training to the capacity enhancement of the communities at national level. So this is what I wanted to share with you about the GBIF work that we do globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rui, for this very interesting presentation. Actually, we have a question in the chat, and which was also my question, so I'm going to ask it now. Which kind of companies share the data on your platform?
Yes, we have many companies that, for example, are utilities, are power producer companies. In Portugal, actually, one of the biggest data sharing institutions is EDP, which is a utility, which is in result of the environmental impact assessment studies that were, and also monitoring studies, all of the data they gathered through this infrastructure building is being shared. So we have this here, but we have that in Colombia, in Norway, in Spain, in France. Total Energy is doing the same. So many of these companies share the data through GBIF.
Okay, fantastic. And if some of the companies that are with us today wish to share the data with you, can they just reach out to you, or how is the process?
That's perfect. I showed the link, www.gbif.org/business. So GBIF globally is targeting the business sector because we know that there are a lot of data that is sitting at these companies that can be shared. And actually, we have developed a manuals to help business to share data through GBIF. So the main steps they have to do, how to find the value proposition of doing this in the company, what's the benefits for the company, and then the route to being a data publisher. There is a manual. I can share then in the link if you want the link for that helps companies in doing that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. You can share it in the chat so participants will have
I
access.
will do it.
Thank you. Good. So now we're gonna move on to Belgium and hear from Olivia Geels, who works for the Belgium TSO, her experience with data sharing. So Olivia, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I will share my screen. Do you see it?
Yes, not in full screen yet. Now it's full screen. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to Manon and Clara for the invitation. We will try to bring the perspective of the operator. Here we are in Belgium with my presentation. I work in the Sustainability and Environment Department of Elia, which is the Belgian transmission system operator. So we own and operate the power lines in the whole country of Belgium. That is approximately 5,400 kilometers of overhead power lines. We also have cables and substations, which is less relevant for today's topic, but our network ranges from 70 kV to 380 kV, so to very high voltage, and 70 kV is in some of the countries more similar to distribution level. So that gives you an idea of what we do. And of course, overhead lines represent a risk of collisions for birds. We once asked nature organizations in Belgium to do an estimation of how big this problem was, to have an idea, and they estimated that around 500,000 birds were killed only due to collisions with our lines in Belgium each year. So that shows how big the problem is, and internally to my colleagues, it's also something that I often repeat. That shows that we really must take action to try to lower this number as much as possible. I put some pictures of dead birds that were found under our lines. We have many victims that are gulls and pigeons mostly, but also other types of birds. So what do we do with this problem? We collaborate with nature organizations in Belgium. So that is Natagora and Natuurpunt. And we asked them already in 2012 to do a risk map of the most risky lines so that we could target our efforts. So here you see what our risk map looks like. So that's all on network, and the color gives the risk score for collisions. How do they calculate this risk score? It's a combination of data on presence of birds in waterbird sites or roost or colonies, also a layer on rare birds and migration corridors. So all these criteria were put together and given a specific weight to give one number, which is the risk score. And then we have the result here with the map, and that really helps us as TSO to know where we want to put our efforts. Of course, all our lines present a risk in itself just from being there, but it's not physically possible, or we don't have the money to equip all of our lines. So with this map, we can really prioritize where we want to put the bird markers. So that's some examples of what we do then. The markers, there are different types that we can place on the lines, but it's always the same idea, is to make the line more visible for birds. And that's really the action we take to reduce the mortality due to collisions. We do it both on existing lines and on new lines if they are built, or if we make an existing line bigger, for example. So our target, which is included also in our sustainability program that is communicated externally, is to equip the 5% most dangerous parts of our lines according to the risk map. We know where they are. And by focusing on these most risky areas, we have more impact on the bird mortality reduction, because we take action where more birds are present and more sensitive species are present potentially. So when we talk about mortality data, so mortality data is collected through corpus searches. So that's either done by having people walking under the line, or we did it last year with a trained dog that was trained to smell the dead birds. And it's really, we count the dead birds, and these studies are ordered by us to the nature organizations. They do it most of the time with volunteers, and then the data is our data, let's say, but shared, of course, with the NGOs with who we have a good collaboration relationship. And they enter the data in the citizen science platform that we have in Belgium, observations.be, which is a portal where any citizen can enter presence of any species. And there is a specific tag that was created to enter also dead birds due to collision with power lines. So they can really select this when they enter the observation in the portal. That gives us also a yearly update of how many observations of dead birds were entered in the portal thanks to this specific tag. And thanks to this data, we have more knowledge of which species are found dead under our lines. And by doing carcass searches before and after installation of bird markers, we can also validate the efficiency of the bird markers installation and adapt our approach if necessary. So that's what I will explain here with two examples. We have one line in the north of the country, close to the coast in Loftskoot, where we installed fireflies. So they're a type of flappers that moves with the wind. And the difference between the before and after count of victims was really impressive, and it showed 95% of reduction. So that really showed that in that case, the markers we installed really worked. But on the other hand, in the second example here, so that's on both pictures, that's a line where the results of the study after installation of the bird markers show that we had more birds than found dead than before. And that really showed the problem, because it's of course the opposite that we want to achieve. And that in that case, the cause was analyzed and is due to the fact that we did not equip the earth wire for technical reason. We could only equip the conductors, and it was done with small spirals, like you see on the right picture. So it's really the lesson learned from this carcass search was, okay, we did worse than what was the situation before, and of course now we want to correct this situation, and we found another way to install markers on the earth wire with helicopters, so that is going to be planned. And that shows also that if you want to verify that the actions that you're taking are effective, it's really useful to have those data collected by nature organizations in this case. So yes, that's the message I wanted to bring. And as key takeaways, I would say, as you know, with the energy transition, we have to develop the power lines and bring electricity to more areas, and that means more power lines in the future, but it can be done in a way that is less harmful for nature if we choose, of course, the best locations to put those new power lines, but also to equip the parts that are more risky with the right equipment. In our case, we have really we really consider data sharing a win-win situation, because it helps to know better how birds are impacted by our network. As a TSO, we know how it's best to place the bird markers and where. And in general, of course, the result is that more birds can be saved from collisions. So we, the TSO, and the collaborating nature organizations, we work with the same objective. And this is only possible, of course, thanks to a trustful and open collaboration between partners. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to count on these partners. Also, they help us for other questions related with birds, with nesting problems, for example, with I often call them with a question, and it's really a good, I would say, a good collaboration that in this case helps the bird conservation. Voilà, so that's from my side. I will stop sharing.
Thanks a lot, Olivia. And you showed a very good example of when data is shared between organizations that trust each other. So on one side, the two NGOs, the two BirdLife partners from Belgium and the grid operators, this leads to really better mitigation strategy from the company side as well. So it's clearly a win-win for nature and for the company. There is a few questions in the chat. We have time to address one, and the first one was from Katia Matos. What are the sources of the data that you use to calculate those risk maps?
I think they use a lot of data that is required in the framework of the EU Birds Directive. Each 6 years, they have to do an update of the presence of birds. So that's one big source of data. There is also in Belgium a lot of counting activities, like each winter in Flanders, they organize sessions to count how many water birds are present on a specific site. So a lot of data is collected in the field. There's also a lot of data in the platform I talked about. So it's various sources. They do also modeling based on the data that is in the platform. Of course, it's not equally distributed, so they do modeling to extrapolate this on the rest of the countries where we have less data available from the platform, for example. I think that's most of that.
Yeah, and actually, I want to add to this that within the LIFE project, one of the LIFE projects that RGI and Elia are partners of, Safe Lines for Birds, they intend to also update those sensitivity maps throughout this project. So stay tuned; they will be updated very soon. And my colleagues can share in the chat the link to our Safe Lines for Birds website if you're interested to know more about this. Good, thanks a lot, Olivia. You'll be back for the panel. So if you have more questions for her, we can address them later. And speaking of the panel, I'll ask all the panelists to join, so they will be in the spotlight. And Tremaine. Okay, very nice. I think now we are complete. So I will like to start with and the NGOs side, actually. We have two NGOs with us here today, BirdLife International and WWF from the US. I would like to hear first from BirdLife International, because you're a global organization, you have a lot of experience. And from your perspective and your experience, what are the biggest challenges to data sharing among key stakeholders?
Thanks, Manon. Thanks, RGI and Risky for the opportunity. Well, I think I can bring good examples about how important it is to share data. And also, I could point it out the main challenge we are all facing when we are dealing with sharing data. And from two different perspectives, from the data owners, but also from who is requesting the data. So from data owners, we have at least, we can flag 4 different situations in which collaborators are resistant to share data. And the first one is when they don't perceive a clear mutual benefit, or is not clear, or is like they cannot identify that in a short term. So it's very important to keep in mind and to clarify the questions we want to answer, and why their data will be relevant to respond what we want. And we will have, in fact, a mutual benefit. Also, the second point is more applied to researchers. All the researchers, they want to publish their own data, what is fair, but sometimes they are concerned about a misinterpretation of the data or a selective use of the data. And I think the biggest fear, is when they believe they will be less invited to collaborate in the future because the data will be available. So that's something that could engage less from this part. The third part is regarding the private sector. That is, the fears are completely different. As we mentioned here before, they are resistant to contribute due to contractual issues. They claim confidentiality, lack of permitting to share the data. But of course, that's depending on the data and on the country. Just to give a brief example here, like in Brazil, when we are speaking about data used in the environmental impact assessments, like we have a law saying that this data should be open. So depends on the country, we have some difference, but sometimes they also don't know about that. And finally, we have the last situation, that is when collaborators simply miss the deadline, is like they are handling big data sets, or they need a lot of time to compile, to clean, to fulfill the tables. So I think the message here is that when the mutual benefit is clear, they are more likely to engage. Also, we have the barriers from the other side, from who is requesting the data. So here I could mention, of course, the financial situation, the difficulty between in following up, in engage the collaborators. We know that the time gap between the time we share the data and when we are having the final outcomes, it's a long time. So we need funding, people need to work, to invest time, to invest effort on that. So we have this challenge as well. But the final message here is that this scenario can change when we have responsible organizations involved. The way I can see, Risk Initiative and BirdLife International, so they are committed to this responsible use of the data. And my final advice in that sense would be that after to understand the questions you want to answer, the data sets you need, it's important to engage and to invest time and effort, to build a relationship of trust with the people you need. And that's from my perspective, my personal perspective, but also I think some parts of BirdLife are also involved on that.
Thanks a lot, Larissa. And maybe in a few words, because you mentioned a lot of challenges, but I would like to finish the positive note. Do you have one example that you would like to share when BirdLife had, where BirdLife had experience with data sharing with other key stakeholders, which improved mitigation strategy?
Thanks, Manon. Yes, right. Yeah, I think here I can bring AviStep and mention at least two different perspectives in which sharing data is increasing the mitigation strategy and improving the precision of our sensitivity mappings. Just to give a brief introduction, AviStep is our avian sensitivity tool for energy planning. It's also a sensitivity mapping tool. It's developed by BirdLife International and is integrating data on distribution, exposure, susceptibility of birds to identify the sensitivity areas and highlight the most important areas to safeguard in the energy expansion. And in this regard, I can point it out two different perspectives in which shared data is relevant. The first one is more applied to input data and how the sharing data is improving our map accuracy. And I can mention our mapping when we mapped Egypt. AviStep in Egypt use data from different sources, some of data we are producing, but also from external researchers. And for example, we need to delineate the important migratory corridors. We need to, like Egypt is an important country in different flyways. So to map this migratory corridor, we use occurrence data, we use bird tracking data from external researchers, and they are fundamental information to improve the accuracy of our final maps. And using their data and working closely with them, our final outcome was much more information, and we could cover with high sensitivity important areas along the west coast in Egypt, and also some important desert areas that are receiving a lot of migratory birds, and it's difficult to predict. So the data from these external experts were fundamental in that sense. Sorry. And in the second procedure that I would like to mention is not about input data, but it's about what we are doing with the outputs we are creating. So in AviStep, we have a big commitment with the transparency and with the universal access to the data. So everything we are producing, the maps, the manual, the supplementary materials, sensitivity scores, everything is available to try to support better decisions and be used by different stakeholders in the end. And just to finalize here, my message, one of the great gains we had was having one of our sensitivity maps integrated in the social and environmental strategic assessment in Uzbekistan. So that means a lot. When we mapped Uzbekistan, besides to identify the most important areas for birds, we also are like supporting their consideration in their strategic planning. So hopefully they could be avoided. In the end, we know we have other factors also be integrated in a strategic assessment, but it's super important to know that this data could be used and could be available for a big audience.
Thanks a lot, Larissa. So another great example of how data sharing has improved mitigation strategies. So in your case at BirdLife International with this AviStep tool, it was on energy infrastructure, offshore, onshore, and power lines. But the RGI also tackles the transport infrastructure. And that's why I would like to hear from Tremaine from WWF US, because you have developed this new global platform called GRID for greening transportation infrastructure and development. Could you maybe introduce us to this platform and tell us what it offers?
Yes, thank you very much, Manon. Thank you very much for having me here today. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about GRID. We mean GRID in a different sense, of course. As you said, it's the Greening Transportation Infrastructure Development Integrated Program. It's funded by the Global Environment Facility. And it focuses really on the upstream end of the infrastructure life cycle. So in that way, we mean we're looking at national and international policy on sustainable infrastructure to benefit nature. We're also looking at financing of infrastructure projects, spatial planning, procurement, many different issues. But as I say, in the early stages of the infrastructure life cycle. So GRID is focused, it has a global scope. We provide information. The idea is for our platform to provide information on transport and sustainable transport infrastructure for a global audience. We will be having webinars on for the project. We will also share out all kinds of different resources, and we are promoting different communities of practice in order to bring practitioners, conservationists, policymakers together to understand the issue better and to look at how they can address it in the context that they work in. Please take a look at our website to learn more about those things. The project has been up and running for a few months now, but we have 5 years to go, so we hope to accomplish a lot. So along with the global platform, we have country projects in 5 different countries. I'm excited to see Martijn Schaap here from Suriname. He leads the project in Suriname. Then we have a project in Ukraine that's focused on roads. I should say in Suriname, we're looking at the ports that are being developed there. In Ukraine, we're looking at road reconstruction. Also in Nepal, we're looking at roads. And then in the Philippines is another road project, and finally in Malaysia. And our partners on this project are the Asian Development Bank and the United Nations Environment Program. So please join us on this project. So I'd like to talk a little bit about data sharing, since that's what we're here to discuss today. We all know that stronger data will get us better outcomes. So among the many different issues that we're tackling with this project is open access to data. So we're beginning to form a project with the United Nations Environment Program World Conservation Monitoring Center. And with that project, we're analyzing where there are gaps in data sharing globally, where large quantities of data are being held but not necessarily shared. And then we're looking at how we can kind of open the floodgates of those data. For example, we know that the multilateral development banks hold a lot of data when different development projects occur. So we would like to work with them to see how open access data policies can be incorporated into their projects. We have an example from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development that in their Approach to Nature project, they do this already. So we're hoping to see how that can be scaled up. And then also, I just want to, talking about powerful partnerships, we are also working with the engineering community. We feel that while the road ecologists, I'm an ecologist myself, we're interested in the data and understanding what's going on the biodiversity side and the nature side. Engineers really have the answers to how to get things done, let's say. So we have actually a longstanding partnership with FIDIC, which is the largest consulting engineers membership organization in the world. It includes over 40,000 members. And with them, we're looking at how we can influence their standard forms of construction contracts to see how data biodiversity can be taken into account more strongly. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing, but there should be a lot to come in the upcoming 5 years.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. It's also great news, and congratulations on your GREED platform. As you said, it's not the GREED on the sense of the power lines, but on the transportation side infrastructure. We have shared in the chat the link to your platform, so I believe people will be able to find you and find out all the work that you will do in the future. I'd like to go back maybe to, because we had the perspective from 2 NGOs now, and I would like to go back to Olivia from Elia and ask you if you had maybe one recommendation for the grid operators that are still hesitant to share data that they monitor. What would be your key recommendation to help them move forward?
It would be don't be afraid to go and talk to the nature organizations, because they can be our partner. And I didn't say it in my presentation, but of course this problem of bird collision is a big reputational risk for us as operator, and we have to take action. There is no choice. But if you take action on your own, there is a risk that you don't take the appropriate action. So that's why we need the help of the ornithologists that know actually way better than us how the birds behave, what is important for them. We're not experts on birds actually, so yeah, my recommendation would be to try to create this relationship and trust between your local organizations, and that gives us also other benefits when we say that we're collaborating with them. For example, if there is a project of a new line, and some of course nobody wants the new line to be built in their backyard, but it's better in those kind of situation to show that we collaborate with the nature organization than the opposite. Otherwise, they, with all their members, could be even more strongly opposed to the project, and that could lead to longer permitting times for these new projects, and nobody wants this. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, and for us it works actually. So I hope it gives you ideas.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure it will give inspiration to others. And yeah, as you said, I mean, data sharing and great collaboration leads to reduction of to speed up the permitting process, to public acceptance. So in your case, in Belgium, it's really working. So it's really a great example that we like to bring when we talk about data sharing and collaboration with NGOs and TSOs. Thanks, Olivia. And Clara, maybe can you tell us a little bit, if we go back to the risky, because it's aligned with what I asked to Olivia. So what are the most valuable returns that the grid operators and transportation operators will receive collaborating with risky?
Okay, thanks for the question. I think the benefits for the operators can go beyond visibility. So we can find easily like 4 big benefits. The first one is the cost-effective solutions that are really important for agencies and for the operators. So when you have access to large data sets. You can identify large-scale patterns that you cannot identify locally, so in individual data sets, which helps the operators to identify more easily which species are particularly vulnerable to mortality and prioritize mitigation. The second one is trust. Building trust with the local communities, with the public authorities. And when there is more transparency, there is more credibility, and this meets the expectations of investors, regulators, and the society. And when the operators are part of this community of sharing data, they have access to new data, tools, maps, collective expertise. So the operators will benefit from a joint learning rather than working in isolation. And the last one is data sharing contributes to a broader scientific legacy that aims to develop more safer and wildlife friendly infrastructure. So I would say 4. 1, reduction of costs, trust, joint learning, and also a part of receiving this broader scientific legacy.
Thanks a lot, Clara. And actually, you mentioned one stakeholder, which is the public administration, the public authorities. So, of course, we have heard from different experts right now, the collaboration between NGOs, research institutes, and grid operators or transport operators is key. But public institutions also have key roles here. And I'm very happy that we have a representative from MITECO, the Spanish Ministry of Environment. So I would like to hear from you, Ruben. What role should public authorities play in data sharing? And what are the main challenges that you have faced so far in Spain?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Manon, for inviting us on behalf of the Ministry for Ecological Transition and from my General Directorate on Biodiversity. Yes, this is our side is the lacking one from up to now in this conversation, because I guess for sure we have an important role. Firstly, in also providing and collecting data from the field, because according to the competencies and responsibilities most of the public administrations have, we have also obliged to some extent to compile or to collect this information from the field as another source of information. But ultimately, public administration has also to take advice and to receive all this information to make another step, another competence we have. For sure, we have to check the information we are analyzing is accurate, is good in terms of promoting. Then what we have to do is policy making, developing plans, management plans, conservation plans for affected species, and also to implement mitigation and compensation measures in case, and also landscape planning when we have to make this information useful. So these are two main aspects of our role in relation to data sharing from the impacts that could provoke in infrastructures. It is also important to take into account the different sources of information from the academia, from NGOs, citizen science, and also from the different stakeholders, from private companies that are also providing this information. And this generates some important challenges for the public administrations. First, I would like to point out that it's important to evaluate the quality of the data in terms of analyzing the real impact geographically or temporarily. So it's important to analyze that information in most of the cases is partial, not covering all the areas, and to some extent biased by different sources of information. So it's important to take into account the frequency of monitoring that is insufficient in some cases for having a good picture of which is the real impact of infrastructures at the national level, and the different sampling effort to detect black spots and which is the priority areas in which to apply measures. And another important aspect is that in some cases the lack of cooperation in providing data for different sectors or even public administration, private operators, and so on. So this is another important aspect. And two final challenges that we have detected is in some cases that all the provision of data came from a voluntary basis, and there's very wide and common circumstances in which this provision of data is not compulsory. So this is another important challenge. And finally, the logistics for compiling, for analyzing, for using this info is quite wide and extensive, at least in our case in Spain, but it's important to have these resources at the public level to analyze and to compile all this information.
Thanks a lot, Ruben. And in the case of Spain, how did you tackle all those challenges? What is in your perspective, the most effective ways to make data sharing easier?
Well, well, it's not easy in the end, but we consider after a very long experience, especially with different infrastructure fields, especially with power line retrofitting and power line impact that we have checked for long lasting for the last decades, and we have considered that acting and compiling information is essential if we have a proper legislation framework. Having a good regulatory framework at the national level, at least, is quite important both for compiling and sharing and providing this data, but also for acting from a conservation point of view to change or modulate this type of infrastructure causing impacts to biodiversity. So I would like to mention that in our case legislation, both for the regional and also national administration have been quite important in reducing the impact of infrastructures. Another important point is to have protocols, very good standardized protocol for different aspects of data collecting and sharing. And if we can make these protocols officials and very well disseminated across all the stakeholders, this type of information will have more accuracy, will be taken through the same methodology, and will be in the end more useful for conservation purposes. Another aspect is to have this type of platforms like the RGI or other ones that are proposed at different levels, and it's quite important to take advantage of this type of internet platforms or ways of communicating and compiling this information. So this is quite useful also in our case. And finally, I would like to mention the importance of transparency from our side, from public administrations. Not only have to receive, but we are the ultimate responsible for promoting this conservation plan, but also to disseminate what we are doing, which are the compiled statistics from this type of different sources, and to also to provide this information to the public audience. And this is also compulsory if we have a very proper legislation framework. This is what I would like to mention and to share with you, and I remain at your disposal for any other inquiry. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ruben. And actually, we just shared in the chat because RGI produced fact sheets specifically on the Spanish case studies. I just shared in the chat so you can learn more about how Spain is tackling with those topics.
Manon, I would like to share some numbers that I think is important to show the importance of the global databases. I led 3 databases, one on roadkill in Brazil in 2018, another in mammals occurrence in Portugal, and this one in global roadkill data. And I checked how many downloads. And only for the global roadkill data, we have more than 1,000 downloads. So it's widely used, and it's not used by the researchers, but also by the consultant companies that want to complement their data when the baseline information it's not available or is very limited. So I would like to highlight that these databases are widely used, are very important to support the infrastructure planning, and we have to still compiling this data and make it available to everyone. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot, Clara. Very interesting facts indeed, and I think it was needed to have those numbers. We're almost reaching the end of the webinar, but maybe we can have one question from the audience. If anyone wants to raise their hand and ask something to the panelists, this is your moment. Because I see that most of the questions in the chats were answered by our experts. So if there is anything that you would like to ask right now before the end, you can raise your hand. Okay, there's a question in the chat. So how do you get the transport ministries involved? For who this question is, or who would like to answer this question? Maybe Tremi? Yes.
Well, I think it takes a unique context to involve the transport ministries. I think you need a champion. I think you need someone with whom you build a relationship and you help them understand the issue. And I'm not necessarily talking about ministers. I'm talking about the people that get work done every day within ministries. But with examples like Colombia and their green road infrastructure guidelines, lineamientos de infraestructura verde vial, they've moved mountains to really have the transport ministry and the environment ministry work very closely together. I'll say with the grid integrated program, we were hoping to have more country projects. We have only 5, as I said, but it takes a lot to convince those two ministries to work together. But that's where real change happens. The same thing in Mongolia. There's a huge interministerial body that has really formed some amazing policy on sustainable infrastructure. So the initial part about how to find that specific person is tough, but once it happens, that's when change can really come through. But maybe Ruben knows since he works in government.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and it's essential the agreement with the different parts of the administration involved in this type of issues. In our case, we have very good relationships with the energy ministry, and of course, they are aware about the importance of promoting very good policies, avoiding this type of environmental impact that infrastructures have. The most difficult discussions is when we have to tackle the issue of providing financial resources to promote this type of retrofitting changes or a type of measures. But in the end, we are promoting this legislation, and this is a very good example in our case that both ministries collaborate in releasing this type of legislation.
Perfect. Thanks a lot to both of you for answering this question. So we are reaching the end. We are 1 minute past, but maybe Clara, do you want to give a few final words? And I encourage all of you to have a look at the Risky project. Clara?
Thank you. I would like to thank you for everybody that attended this webinar. There was more than 500 registrations. It was a pity there was a small technical problem that the people could not reach in the beginning. But anyway, we had reached to 150. I hope the aim of this webinar that is in the scope of Risky is to clarify the importance of data sharing and learn from the different organizations that are related with this data. So I hope we could clarify. We plan to organize a workshop on standardization and also highlight the importance of collecting some variables that are really important to predict the collision and evaluate the impact on the population that are essential to prioritize mitigation. Thank you very much for the attendance. I see that there is a lot of interest. I hope to keep working on this, and everybody is welcome to join the Risky initiative.
Thanks a lot, Clara. And from my end, I would also thank everyone for joining, also our experts for providing your input. I hope the people in the audience got inspired by the best practices and the good examples that we've heard today. The recording will be available in the next days, so you'll be able to rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. And if you want to stay up to date with RGI events, you can subscribe to our RGI newsletters. And please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any questions. Thanks a lot, and I wish you a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Manon.
Gracias.